By far the most common complaint against the historical inaccuracy series of this channel is that it's just a game or it's just a movie. Usually our response to this would be that we understand that, but entertainment media still has a strong influence on people's perspective of history, and these videos are here simply to educate on the facts with the unique selling point of being much more detailed than your average historical review. Today, however, let's take a different approach. Let us give in to these complaints by covering a video game that wasn't just made to be fun, but was officially endorsed by a documentary network to be a product of education. That game being the History Channel Battle for the Pacific. Each mission opens with a short documentary-style cutscene that heavily lack proper information and straight-up misstate at times.
On September 27, 1940, Germany, Japan, and Italy signed the Tripartite Pact, officially making them the Axis powers. America had not yet decided to enter the war, believing it to be a conflict among European and Asian nations that did not require their intervention. However, on December 7, 1941, the United States found out that Japan would not be satisfied to leave them alone.
The United States did not just sit back and do nothing before entering the Second World War as this makes out. The cutscene fails to mention the USA's roles before joining the war, like providing significant military supplies and other assistance to the Allies. It also says nothing of the fact that US-Japanese relations had been strained throughout the 1930s over a variety of issues, resulting in key moments like the embargo on the trade of all military useful items with Japan, including oil.
Without advance warning, a fleet of Japanese air and naval forces attacked the American port of Pearl Harbor in Hawaii.
The Pearl Harbor attack did not occur without advance warning. The US received and acknowledged certain signs and warnings, such as intercepted radio broadcasts that the attack was incoming, though failed to take them seriously for a variety of reasons. We are placed as a United States Marine Corps private named Delvinsky into the Battle of Wake Island during the Japanese landings there on December 23, 1941. Many assets in the game were lazily reused from another Activision published title, Call of Duty 3. The first visible instance of this is with the Marines, who are dressed in the Army 2nd Pattern HVT uniforms introduced late in 1942, making its appearance here both misplaced and anachronistic. The 400 men of the 1st Marine Defense Battalion stationed on Wake Island wore the khaki summer service uniform, as represented here with an artwork using the game's models by Michael Akkerman. Some of the green HVT uniforms have been given an incorrect brown and beige recoloring for some reason. Many Marines are wearing the insignia of the 29th Infantry Division. This was an army unit that only fought in the European theatre of operations in World War II. Others have patches of the 90th Infantry Division. Like the 29th, this was an army unit that only fought in Europe. The American models all have sleeve patches for the ranks of sergeant or corporal. Unlike army troops in the European and Mediterranean theatres, rank chevrons were not standard in the Pacific and hardly ever worn by Marines. The garrison cap is seen worn in direct combat, where the more protective helmet should be worn. Said garrison cap is also missing the Marine Corps insignia. The ones with hard headgear wear M1 helmets, which had only recently been introduced in 1941. The Wake Island defenders were still wearing the older M1917 helmets during this battle. Some of the helmets have scrim over them, which were not prevalent with Marines in the Pacific. These were common among American Army soldiers in Europe, who acquired them mostly from British or Canadian Army stocks before being shipped off for combat. All of them are shown wearing pistol belts, many of which have nothing on them. They should mostly have properly equipped M1923 cartridge belts. The few that do have gear on their belts wear pistol and carbine M1s as their only ammo pouches, despite none of them wielding any carbines or pistols. Their pouches lack buttons, and the first aid pouch is attached up on their belts instead of hanging off the bottom as they should. Some of the US troops are wearing the M1928 as their only haversack throughout the game, without any of the attached entrenching tools or bayonets. Every American wears satchels filled with M9 rifle grenades that did not enter service until 1942. There would only be one man with a grenade launcher per squad, and it would be the earlier VB launcher for this period. They wear army service shoes instead of the proper Marine boondockers. We, and only we, are by default armed with an M1911A1, which was not issued to regular infantry privates. Unless it was purchased from the civilian market before shipping off, we should not have it. Meanwhile, Marines that would commonly have sidearms like NCOs do not have any in-game. All of the guns produce ridiculously bright white muzzle flashes. The spent magazines of most of the weapons still have ammo inside, even after emptying them. Many of the rounds are an incorrect grey shade instead of the proper brass and copper colour. In addition to our sidearm, we by default begin armed with both a submachine gun and rifle. Actual World War II Marines never did this due to weight constraints. We should be armed only with one primary weapon. This is another one of those video games with many firearm first-person models that look weirdly short and stubby, exponentially so with the longer weapons. The appearance of the M1A1 Thompson is premature, since it was not adopted until late 1942. The older M1928 Thompson would be more appropriate here. The Thompson's front sight is unusually tall. It is modeled with the 30-round magazine, but always only holds a maximum of 20 rounds. When reloading, we do not press the magazine release and just rip the mags out with brute force. It is incorrectly shown to be a closed-bolt weapon when it should be open-bolt. The M1 Garand is modeled on the late war version. During this period, it should have the earlier lock bars in the rear sight, single notch gas plug and mill trigger guard. The M1 Garand appears as the only rifle used by the Americans in game, despite not becoming the primary weapon of Marine infantry until 1943. Before then, their standard rifle was the M1903 Springfield that never shows up in the game. Some of the firearms have rear sights that are too large, as especially apparent on the M1 rifle here. Developers of first-person shooter games often do this to give the player a larger sight image when aiming, though we do not actually properly aim down the sights in this game, so why they still enlarge them is anyone's guess. The Mark II hand grenades have the olive drab paint that was not added until late 1942. For this period, they should still be the bright yellow painted ones. The Mark IIs are missing their yellow bands, indicating they may have been modeled on inert training grenades. The grenades still have their safety spoons attached when thrown, which would mean they should not explode. We can find a Winchester Model 1897 trench gun, which is incorrectly modeled with the ejection port mirrored to the left side. Its hammer is permanently stuck cocked when firing. In typical video game fashion, the shotgun has a pathetic damage range in contrast to reality. The wooden boxes around the American positions have US Army stenciled on them with the Air Force logo too, despite this island being defended by Navy Marines. The fuel canisters around the place appear to be modeled after modern day plastic ones. Period World War II US jerry cans were made of stamped steel. For some reason, there are what look to be badly modeled Japanese canteens with US stamped on them around the place. The radios we come across do not resemble any used by the US military during World War II. Period ones like the SCR-194 or 195 would be better.
Bravo Charlie 849 calling Great Eagle. Do you copy? Bravo Charlie 849 calling Great Eagle.
Bravo is post-war NATO phonetic code for B. The World War II era call sign would be Baker.
It's starting. The Japanese are inbound.
The Japanese infantry landings on Wake Island began on December 23, 1941 at 2:35 AM, meaning it should be night in this level, not day. The enemies we face are Japanese Imperial Army soldiers. The actual infantry that landed on this atoll consisted of over 1,500 Imperial Japanese Navy personnel of the 2nd Maizuru Special Landing Force who would have their own unique uniforms. All of the Japanese army men are wearing Yakubo field caps when they should be wearing the Type 90 helmet in combat. They wear the open-collared Showa 17 as their only uniform in the game. This was not introduced until 1942. The Type 98 uniform would be more common and period suitable here. We should also see others like the Type 3 in the mid to late war levels. All of them are missing their rank insignia. Far too many wear M1929 pouches for the 50mm grenade. These were only issued to specialized motormen armed with the Type 89 grenade discharger. The vast majority wear the strangely depicted two-tone leather jackboots instead of the standard ankle boots and puttees. The few that do have puttees incorrectly wear them tucked under their ankle boots instead of properly over. The Japanese lack much of their standard gear, including the ammo pouches, bayonet frog, water canteen, gas mask bag, taco pack and haversack. The Nambo Type 100 SMG is a late war model introduced in 1944. Even when not outright anachronistic, there are way too many Type 100s prevalent among the Japanese forces throughout the game. This was a rare SMG with only some 8,000 of them ever being produced in World War II. The Type 100 is also horribly modelled. Parts like the sling loops and takedown pin are missing. Its vent holes are too symmetrical. The stock is covering too much of the receiver's rear, and it has a straight magazine instead of an accurate curved one. It is correctly depicted as an open bolt weapon, but when doing our empty reload, our character unnecessarily does the motion to pull the charging handle back anyway. The rifle used by the Japanese is referred to as the Type 38 in the game, but appears to be modeled with some elements of the Type 99. There should be a proper depiction of both the Type 38 and Type 99 rifles in use, especially the former in the early war missions. Truly fantastic video game making sees us being able to completely skip the bolt pullback animation by just pressing the aim or switch weapon button. The Arasaka is always reloaded with a full 5-round clip regardless of if there is still ammo in a rifle. The Browning M1919A6 appears as an anachronism, since it did not enter service until late 1943. We should be seeing earlier MGs among the Americans like the Browning M1917 for this period. The M1919 has the conical flash hider that was not widely issued until after World War II. We always needlessly cock the MGs whenever we set it up to fire. All machine guns in the game are operated by a single regular infantryman instead of by their appropriate dedicated crews with assistants and ammunition carriers. All mounted machine guns in game fire with unlimited ammo and no reload or cooldown animation. The landscape in this level does not resemble anything like it should. We are shown fighting through a far too large trench network and beach with a full-on jungle behind us inland. The actual Wake Atoll is very small with no jungle and had more basic dug-in defensive positions. A notable point throughout the game is the complete lack of local residents and resistance forces. Many of the islands we fight through were still filled with civilians who suffered immensely under Japanese occupation. Wake, for instance, had over 1,200 civilian workers on the island, many of whom volunteered to assist in preparing defenses and directly engaging Japanese forces in combat during the battle. Having clearly taken inspiration from the German Atlantic Wall defenses in Europe, the developers decided to place check hedgehog and log obstacles all over the place. These were not used in the Pacific Theater. Some of the log obstacles are even positioned backwards facing the sea, Saving Private Ryan style. These were designed to have the incoming vessels ride up them to hit a mine placed at the top. The Japanese are seen landing in ridiculously oversized British LCAs. In reality, they came ashore here in Daihatsu-class landcraft as well as Momi-class patrol boats that deliberately ran aground. The ships on the horizon are supposed to be the Japanese fleet, but actually are just poorly modeled American vessels in modern-day configurations. Parts including the surface-to-air missile launchers and bow radar antennas are clearly anachronistic. The ships are also way too close to each other and the shore. They would be well in range of the coastal batteries at this distance and would have little room to maneuver around each other. An American B-17 Flying Fortress appears above. The only US aircraft used over Wake during the battle were F-4F Wildcats of Marine Fighter Squadron 211 stationed on the island's airfield. The unit markings on the bomber appear to be fictional. They do not match with any in the B-17 database. All aircraft drop invisible bombs. The B-17 does not even have its bomb bay doors open, yet still produces these undersized explosions. In typical video game cinematics, the aircraft fly at ridiculously low altitudes. Dropping bombs this low to the ground would blow up the planes themselves. The aircraft also often do not produce sound and fly at extremely slow speeds. They would stall and fall to the ground at this pace. Every fighter plane in the game has drop tanks attached at all times. These were designed to be jettisoned before combat for increased maneuverability and to minimize the risk of igniting the fuel from ground fire. We are tasked with using an M45 quad mount. This anti-aircraft gun was not introduced until the later years of the war. The actual AA emplacements on Wake Island consisted of 12 3-inch M3s. Just like the MGs, we use the AA guns completely by ourselves to fire endlessly. The crew of multiple men that would be assigned to use these are nowhere to be found. The quad mount's M18 reflex sight has been replaced with an iron sight, and its elevation controller does not match with its real life version. The traverse and elevation of the M45 was electronically driven. Its power came from two 6-volt batteries recharged by a Briggs & Stratton generator. All of this meant that quite a bit of sound was made when it was in motion. No noise is heard of it in the game other than from the MG's firing, and we are able to traverse and elevate it unrestricted, allowing for ridiculously fast movement. We come across Willys MB Jeeps with unit numbers showing that they are the 9th vehicle of Baker Company, 83rd Reconnaissance Battalion, 3rd Armoured Division. This is an army unit that only fought in Europe during World War II. The unit markings on the CCKW352 trucks dictate them as belonging to the 82nd Airborne Division, once again an army unit that only fought in Europe.
They're retreating! They're retreating! Good work! We did it! We did it! Hooray!
Hilariously bad voice acting aside, the Japanese naval assault on this day was successful for them. The US Marines surrendered at around 8 AM on December 23rd, and the island remained under Japanese occupation until the end of the war. The Americans were not able to repel the invaders minutes after their infantry landings began like the game shows. This video is brought to you by Fume. Fume is an award-winning flavored air device that delivers great taste without any harmful chemicals. It is not a vape or an e-cigarette. Instead of inhaling vapor, you simply breathe in natural, non-toxic flavors that satisfy the craving without the downside. There are tons of different tastes to try, with my go-to one being the refreshing crisp mint. Fume has a high-quality and portable wooden design that even includes a magnetic fidget feature that adds an extra layer of fulfillment, making it perfect for relieving stress or staying focused. Over half 500,000 people have already made the switch to Fume as part of their habit change journey, and there is no better moment to join them, as for a limited time, if you order the journey pack using my code TheFrosty1, you will get a free Fume topper, a neat accessory to level up your experience. So after finishing this video, be sure to click the channel's exclusive links below or scan the QR code on the screen to get yours today. Now, back to the inaccuracies. We are brought to the early 1942 Battle of Bataan in the Luzon island of the Philippines.
Luzon, the largest island in the Philippines, long occupied by American forces, was attacked by Japan. General Douglas MacArthur realized that it was a lost cause and retreated to the Bataan Peninsula for a last stand.
This is a repeated point in the cutscenes.
Leyte Island would be the first stop in General MacArthur's return to the Philippines. By securing this island, he would have a foot in the door to invade the largest island, Luzon, where he had previously made a last stand on the Bataan Peninsula.
Although General Douglas MacArthur did oversee the retreat to Bataan, he personally did not stay or perform a last stand there. MacArthur's headquarters was located on Corregidor Island to the south of the peninsula, and he gained the nickname of Dugout Doug for only making one trip to Bataan during the battle. MacArthur then completely left his forces in the Philippines when he transferred to Australia in early March of 1942, a month before Bataan fell to the Japanese. All of the surviving troops of the 1st Marine Defense Battalion on Wake Island were captured by the Japanese after surrendering and sent to various POW camps where they spent the rest of the war. As a matter of fact, there were no Marine Corps infantry divisions involved in the Bataan battle. It was US and Philippine Army units that were the primary Allied combat force on the peninsula. Unless our Marine characters somehow escaped enemy confinement and were immediately reassigned to an Army unit on Bataan, then it makes no sense for us to be fighting on this front. Our squad is undersized at just 4 men. An actual US Marine Corps squad consisted of over twice this, and there will be various other squads also partaking in such an assault. One of our squad mates is carrying an SCR-300, which did not see combat use until August of 1943. Even where its appearance is not outright anachronistic, this radio was used for long-range communication on a battalion level under the command of a major or captain. It wouldn't be assigned to a regular infantry squad under enlisted men like this.
Our mission is to get to Piathong village and oversee the last evacuation transport.
There is no village in Bataan called Piathong. This is a completely fictional location.
This is serious. This entire island is being overrun by a massive Japanese invasion force. There are thousands of soldiers landing on the northern part of the island, along with heavy sea, air, and ground fire support.
What on earth is this sergeant rambling about? These Americans would long already know the island is being overrun. The northern part of Luzon was captured by the Japanese months before now. The Allies were forced to retreat to Bataan after everywhere else in the region fell, which the game itself even just talked of in the levels cutscene. As to be expected from such a rushed game, the sea vessels the Americans utilize are just reused models of the oversized British LCAs and modern-day battleships that the Japanese were seen using at Wake Island. These ships are here seemingly to partake in the evacuations the Americans are depicted conducting throughout this level.
We just need a few more minutes to load the trucks and then we can leave this place before the Japanese have us totally overrun.
Good work, Private. You've saved the lives of many men today. Let's follow these convoys out and leave this island before it's totally overrun.
This has got to be a sick joke. The Battle of Bataan was infamous for the Allied forces becoming trapped there with no major evacuations occurring. After promised naval support failed to arrive in time, they were forced to conduct a massive surrender to the Japanese on April 9, 1942. In fact, it was the largest surrender in American and Filipino military history, with over 76,000 soldiers taken captive. This then led to the notorious forceful transfer known as the Bataan Death March, where thousands of Filipinos and Americans died from exposure and being summarily executed. Despite being ubiquitous with the Bataan battle and one of the biggest Japanese war crimes, the surrender and death march are not mentioned whatsoever in game, not even in the cutscenes. The Nambu Type 96 light machine gun is actually just a retextured British Bren. We can see that it still retains the .303 magazine in place of the 6.5 by 50mm Arasaka mag. The magazines somehow all have rounds stacked perpendicular with each other. The Type 96 appears in low numbers as the final weapon of this game's Japanese small arms arsenal. Other common machine guns such as the light Type 99 and heavy Type 92 never show up. Standard hand weapons including grenades like the Type 97 and pistols encompassing the Type 14 Nambu also completely fail to appear.
I bet they've already put mines on the trail. Check it out. Make sure you defuse them.
Minesweeping would not be done by a regular rifleman. This would be the job of engineers, who would have special training for it. We do not even properly find and defuse the mines by using minesweeping equipment. Instead, they just spawn in front of us and we use telekinesis to make them disappear. The mines are clearly exposed over the ground. These were designed to be concealed by getting buried. The mines themselves are badly modelled American M15s introduced in the 1950s. For some reason, TM46 is inscribed on them, despite that being a completely different and also anachronistic Soviet mine. The M15 is an anti-tank mine that requires at least 300 pounds or 136 kilograms of pressure applied on top to explode. Unless our marine is an absolute unit, then they should not blow up by us just standing on or near them. Overall, these should just be Japanese Type 93 mines instead. We are then placed into the Battle of Guadalcanal in early August of 1942.
Our goal is Henderson Field, the only large airfield in this area.
The airfield at Lunga Point was not nicknamed Henderson Field until the middle of August after it was captured. The Lunga Point airfield was captured on August 8, 1942 at 4 PM by the 1st Marine Division. Unless our characters got another miraculous transfer, then we should not be here. Also, this airfield and surroundings was secured by thousands of troops from multiple battalions of the 1st and 5th Marine Regiments, not just a single undersized squad. The Marines wearing green HBT uniforms is not as obviously wrong now, though they should be the Marine Corps pattern P41 version and not the Army 2nd pattern ones that they still have in the game. The Marines are wearing bare bones gear for having just landed. They should have full equipment including the newly introduced M1941 haversacks. Again, the landscape does not match with reality. Our starting position would have to be the red beach where the Marines first landed and Guadalcanal. In reality, the distance between the beach and airfield was much further than what we see in the game, with Alligator Creek and much jungle between them. We should not be fighting a large opposition of Imperial Japanese Army infantrymen for this airfield. The Japanese units stationed there were of the 11th and 13th construction units. They had fled miles east after being heavily bombarded before the Americans came ashore. The 1st Marine Division quickly captured the airfield with scarce resistance and a few prisoners taken. The Type 97 infantry motor is seen set up next to boxes of American M43A1 motor rounds, instead of the appropriate Japanese version. The ahistorical radios begin to appear among the enemy positions. A period Japanese radio like the Type 94-6 transceiver would be more suitable. We also start to find food cans with English writing on them in the enemy territories instead of proper Japanese alternatives. The artillery pieces we have to destroy are Type 1 47mm anti-tank guns. These did not first see combat action until 1943. The half-pound TNT charges we use stick to the surface they are planted on. These charges did not have any sticky material in reality. They also somehow explode without us properly setting them up with any blasting cap and detonator. Upon arrival at the airfield, we see that it and the surrounding area look very different from reality. There are a number of Japanese fighter aircraft on the runway. The Japanese construction units just completed building the airfield on August 6, 1942, and so it was not fully operational yet. No Japanese aircraft are known to have ever landed on the runway. Every one of the many enemy aircraft we see throughout the game are Imperial Japanese Navy A6M2A Type 0 Model 11 long-range carrier-based fighters with the white paint scheme. We do not see any of the later Zero models or green camouflages that went on to replace this. We also do not see any Imperial Japanese Army Air Service planes like the Ki-43 Hayabusa. The Type 97 aircraft machine gun can incorrectly be seen mounted on the Zero fighter's wings instead of the nose. The Zeros also completely lack unit markings. The game has a model for the Japanese 25mm Type 96 AA gun, but because the devs were not bothered animating it, the one we are provided to use on the enemy airfield is another out-of-place American M45 quad mount. After capturing the airfield, we are brought to the evening on what seems to be the same day to face a Japanese counterattack that forces us to temporarily retreat.
Alright, we'll retreat to the artillery position. We can hold out there.
The only time that a group of Marines retreated from the airfield area would be on the early morning of September 14th at 5:30 AM, where a company of Japanese, likely to be the 6th Company of the 2nd Battalion 4th Regiment, managed to capture the western end of the Fighter 1 airstrip for a brief moment. Then it was recaptured by 2 companies from the 1st Engineer Battalion. This did not happen until weeks after the airfield was already secured by the Marines, and not at the main Henderson Field airstrip as they try to portray here.
Where is your commanding officer?
Dead, sir. I've taken command of the squad.
The Marine that died was an enlisted man, not a CO. In fact, there are no models for any American commanding officers in this game.
Good job, Private.
We will also notice that the Marines keep referring to each other as privates.
Private, call for an airstrike. There are too many of them for us to slug it out like this.
Yes, sir. But I need someone to keep the heat off while I radio out.
As aforementioned, all of them are wearing only corporal and sergeant rank insignia. We recapture the airfield with the aid of a couple more American B-17 bombers providing outlandishly danger-close air support. This does not align with any events of the actual engagements here. The US aircraft that fought over Henderson Airfield were smaller fighters and dive bombers. Our next mission brings us back to the Philippines for the Battle of Leyte during the initial amphibious assault there on October 20th, 1944. Our presence as Marine infantry again does not add up. The American forces that landed here were of the 6th Army. Again, there are way too few US forces seen in the assault. Even just our landing craft is woefully undermanned with only 6 Marines aboard and no driver. Exactly what engagement on Leyte the game is trying to depict is a mystery and just seems to be baseless nonsense. We are never provided a precise location, unit or time, and looking at our surroundings does not help either as it does not match with any of the landing zones on Leyte. In fact, many of the areas we fight through are just reused from previous maps like this trench network from the Wake Island level. The devs have changed the markings on the wooden crates to Japanese ones, but kept the modern plastic fuel canisters all over the place. The Japanese did not even use any fuel containers like the jerrycan during World War II. They relied more on drums for transporting fuel. We are tasked with countering a bonsai charge.
Damn! Are they nuts? They're charging!
This is also something that is not based on any events of the actual Leyte landings. Contrary to what video games like this love to overblow, large human wave assaults such as this rarely occurred and only happened as a desperate measure.
Whoever kills the officer, his drinks are on me!
This quote-unquote Japanese officer is just a recolored version of the regular enlisted model, but with a helmet and pistol holster. He is the only so-called Japanese officer that appears throughout the game and does not even have the rank insignia to indicate that he's an officer at all.
Now will someone call the damn medic?
The term medic would usually be said by army men. Given that our characters are supposed to be Marines, this does not add up. The medical personnel attached to the Marine Corps were known as hospital corpsmen or just corpsmen. The following mission sees us in a jungle of Leyte to destroy a Japanese munitions depot. Again, there is nothing here to indicate that it is based on any actual engagement in the battle. It is just more fictional slop. A very similar point can also be said for this next level that supposedly takes place early in the 1945 Battle of Luzon. Most of these missions are so utterly generic that if it was not for the intro cutscene and text telling us where they are set, then we would have no other way to tell. It was also the 6th and 8th armies that made up the frontline American ground forces in Luzon. Yet again, we as Marine infantry have no right to be fighting on this front. The P-47 fighters have markings for the 78th Fighter Group. This unit only fought in North Africa and Europe, not the Pacific. The M4 Sherman tanks have a few errors in the modelling. The dent on the differential cover is too shallow, the engine deck is missing the grille doors, and they lack specific unit insignia. We are brought to the Battle of Iwo Jima. We seem to land in the Green Beach area near the base of Mount Shurabachi. The 28th Marine Regiment of the 5th Marine Division landed here on February 19, 1945. Again, how are we here? Our characters must be the most miraculously transferred Marines in the whole US military to fight in all these battles. You guessed it, there are once again way too few American forces. Thousands of Marines from 3 divisions landed on this island. There should also be many more vehicles in the Green Beach sector, including Sherman tanks of the 4th Tank Battalion and engineers bulldozers or CBs, along with Navy personnel with their LVTs and LCMs. The depiction of Iwo Jima is way off. The colour of the sand here should be darker due to volcanic ash. The 15 feet line of sand embankment along the beach is absent. The Japanese defensive lines are way too close to the beach and consist of just reused trenches from the Wake Island and Leyte levels, with none of their actual pillboxes present. The entire inner area of the island has an equally high mountain range or ridge in the background. Instead, the areas in the centre should be lower, with just the large Mount Shurabachi to the left of us or southwest, and maybe the quarry way further to the right northeast of us. The weird US stamped canteens suddenly start appearing among the Japanese positions, seemingly in place of the standard Type 5 canteen. The Marines should now have additional uniform items that are missing from the game, particularly the frogskin helmet cover. Despite being a standard squad weapon since the start of the war, the Browning M1918A2 VAR only starts appearing within the latter few levels of this game, in the hands of Marines who were previously shown to be regular riflemen. Other common guns such as the M1 Carbine, M3 Grease Gun, M1 Bazooka and M2 Flamethrower continue to be completely absent. The enemies we have to eliminate here are called snipers in game, but they are just extremely exposed regular Japanese riflemen firing at us from a point blank range. In no stretch of the imagination could they be considered snipers.
These caves are the key to Iwo Jima. They've got hundreds of tunnels under the island. Empty them out and destroy the infrastructure they've got down there. Let's go!
Why are we concentrating on clearing this cave? The main and far more important objective for the 28th Marine Regiment during the initial landings was to race across the southern neck of the island to cut off Mount Shurabachi from supporting Japanese forces, which they successfully did on the first day. After clearing the caves, we are depicted fighting to the top of Mount Shurabachi on what seems to be the evening of the same day we landed. The Marines only started to directly assault and capture the summit of Mount Shurabachi on D-Day +1 February 20th and D+4 February 23rd respectively. The presence of P-47 fighters providing close air support is outright wrong, as these were not used by the US Navy and never saw action in the battle for Iwo Jima. They should be carrier-based F-4U Corsairs instead. It is clear that the Marines here are imitating the event where a group raised a bigger flag on a heavy pole atop the mountain. This was the second version put up after the initial smaller first flag that is completely absent from the game. The flag shown is the modern 50-star version instead of the period 48-star one. The flag here was famously raised by a group of US Marines of the 2nd Battalion 28th Marine Regiment, each of whom we know the identities of. It was not raised by our fictional squad in their out-of-place army uniforms. After the second flag was put on the summit, the raisers concentrated on keeping the flag in position and then taking photographs and being motion captured together. There's no reports of the men all suddenly saluting to the flag, just these 2 Marines nearby did so. And so we are left with a grand total of almost 150 historical inaccuracies. A quite staggering amount considering this game is only about an hour and a half long, and how it was, you know, endorsed by the History Channel. Massive thanks to Fume for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check it out using the links below to secure yours today. For more inaccuracies, click on this video covering the title this game ripped many assets from, Call of Duty 3. Massive thanks to the aid from fellow researchers for Ryza, Michael Akkerman and Davidson. Of course, thank you for watching. This has been the Frosty One, out.